I know the system is broken, and I'm the one, because I know it so well, because I was on both sides of it. I was on the other side all my life, and I've always made large contributions. And frankly, I know the system better than anybody else, and I'm the only one up here that's going to be able to fix that system, because that system is wrong.
Are you? Now, that was Donald Trump in March of 2016 during the GOP primary debates. And if you just fast forward 8 years later, it is abundantly clear that Donald Trump did not drain the swamp. In fact, he swims among the largest swamp monsters. And that was the point of a recent Washington Post piece that talked about all the various moneyed interests that he has invited to his campaign, to work within his campaign. And as a result, he has done a 180 on a number of different policy issues, from a TikTok ban to vaping and whether that should be banned. We've got a lot to show you in terms of evidence. Before we do, though, this is Cenk's bread and butter. This is the topic he cares about the most. Cenk, are you surprised?
Yeah, of course I'm not surprised. But guys, as you read into the story, you're gonna see all these different policies that Trump has done in the past or is advocating for now, all directly linked to donors. So no one is more in favor of the swamp than Donald Trump is. And I say that with full knowledge of how corrupt the establishment is and how they'll do anything for donors. But Trump is basically saying, hold my beer, okay? Wait till you see how I suck up to donors myself. And in fact, that whole drain the swamp thing, as you're gonna see here, he was actually against it. He never wanted to do that, saying, we've got a quote for you guys about it. His advisors convinced him to do it. Why did he not want to do it in the first place? Because he knows he's the swamp. He knows he's the guy who wants to be corrupt more than anyone else. But he saw that it worked with the crowd, so he's like, all right, it looks like it's good at tricking people, so let's pretend we're in favor of cleaning up corruption as we ourselves are intensely corrupt.
So if you don't mind, get that quote ready, because I don't have it in the graphics.
No, I got it.
But I will say, the video that you just watched was the first time he talked about corruption in Washington, and was so pleased at the positive reaction he received for it that he started using the drain the swamp statement more and more during his campaigning. Now, let's talk about what's happening today. Lobbyists, according to Washington Post, are represented among high-level staff, informal advisors, and party faithful who planned the summer convention in Milwaukee as people with access to Trump turn that knowledge into money-making opportunities. And really, that's what's behind a lot of this, an effort to utilize Donald Trump and his influence in order to increase the amount of money they make, the amount of profit they make. So let's talk about TikTok first. So Trump wanted to ban TikTok at first, but not anymore. And if you're wondering, well, what's behind his change of heart? There are two main figures worth talking about. Number one is Kellyanne Conway, who happens to be a consultant for Club for Growth. Now, Club for Growth isn't really all that interested in terms of their think tank being utilized on behalf of TikTok. It's just that their biggest donor is heavily invested in TikTok's parent company. And also, David Urban is a veteran of Trump's two previous campaigns and still travels with Trump frequently. Turns out that he is a registered lobbyist for TikTok. So you have these individuals within Trump's campaign essentially having a real world effect on his views in regard to policies like a potential ban on TikTok. Another example is vaping, and there are plenty of examples of people within Trump's orbit who have basically convinced him to not be in favor of a vaping ban, something that he used to be in favor of. A longtime smoking critic who used his time in office to crack down on e-cigarettes, Trump now presents himself as a savior of vaping. So what changed? Trump's campaign manager, Susie Wiles, is one of at least 5 people advising Trump who have advocated for tobacco, vaping, or cannabis interests in recent years. And that's according to lobbying disclosures and interviews. In fact, Wiles is registered or was registered to lobby for just one client in the first quarter of the year, and that was Swisher. That's a tobacco company and the maker of Swisher Sweets, which is a popular flavored cigar thing brand. Also, Trump asked oil executives, this is a story we covered, to raise $1 billion for his campaign during a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago this spring, in which he vowed to undo environmental regulations put in place by President Joe Biden. I should also note that Susie Wiles, lobbied for companies in the coal and liquefied natural gas business. So there are more examples. For instance, there's one of his biggest fundraisers, a guy by the name of Brian Ballard. Brian Ballard had suggested that a tobacco company by the name of Reynolds American donate to Trump. Ballard himself had bundled $50 million for Trump's campaign, and Ballard has attended a lengthy meeting between Trump and Reynolds executives earlier this year in New York, according to one of the people who attended that meeting. And so they're doing the lobbying work while working on Trump's campaign, and obviously they're doing it for their own benefit and for the profit motives of these various companies that are involved.
Yeah, so let me give you a big number here to give you a sense of, okay, yeah, but why is Trump listening to them? I get it that they're making money. Bryan Lanza is the biggest bundler for Donald Trump, period. So he's not the biggest donor, he's the biggest bundler, and he's gotten him $50 million in campaign contributions. Well, that'll open a lot of doors with Donald Trump, okay? So now I'm gonna give you a spectacular example as finally solves the mystery that we had from his first term. I'll get to that in a second, but first, the quotes that I was referring to. This is from the Washington Post, and whenever I read mainstream media, I remove their spin and I look mainly for the quotes, okay? So I'm gonna read you what the Washington Post wrote, but the Donald Trump quotes are the most important. They explain Trump never liked the metaphor drain the swamp. He said in 2016, quote, "I hated it. I said, oh, that's so hokey." So he didn't want to do drain the swamp. Okay, now this is something that I've told you guys many times about how he A/B tests in front of a crowd, and whatever the crowd likes, he gives it to them because he doesn't have any ideology. He just thinks, I'm a con man, you're a mark, what do you like? You want that? I'll pretend to be in favor of that, okay? And meanwhile, I'll get money from the other guys, okay? So that's what swindlers do. So here's more. When Trump realized his audience loved the phrase drain the swamp, he quickly made it part of his standard stump speech in 2016 and again in 2020. But they explain it was mainly in 2016, and as I've told you guys many times, that's why he won in 2016. So far, he said drain the swamp only 59 times in this election, and mainly not about corruption. He's now pivoting it to deep state and blah, 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 right? He said drain the swamp more than that in just October of 2016. So back when he was running on this. So he said on the campaign trail in 2020, quote, about this phrase, drain the swamp. "I put it in one speech, the place went crazy. I said, I'm starting to like that expression." You see that? Okay, never believed in it, just doing it to get you guys to believe in him while he's doing the exact opposite. So who is Lanza? He used to be the communications director for Citizens United, the actual group that sued to allow corruption to happen in the first place. They're like, hey, we would love to do corruption and funnel untold amount of money to politicians for our donors so they can control the government. And they won that case. He was their communications director. He's in a lot of ways patient zero here, okay? And you're never gonna guess who Mercury represented that, again, it involves Susan Wiles, Lanza, et cetera, all these people. ZTE. Now, you might not remember ZTE, but if you're a longtime Young Turks viewer, you were watching us during the Trump years, I was like, this random Chinese company all of a sudden got special exemptions. And I'm like, while Trump was going on the warpath against China and trade and tariffs and all this stuff, and all of a sudden he's like, ZTE, we like ZTE.
I'm a big fan of ZTE.
Yeah, so I'm like, I guarantee you this is related to a donor, right? But I said at the time, but I don't have it. I don't know which donor it is. I don't know how they're getting him the money, but there's no way that he picks one random company in China out of nowhere while he's in a war with China to love. Okay, so here it is. So in a pair of tweets that May, back then, Trump wrote that he and Chinese President Xi Jinping were, quote, working together to bring ZTE back into business fast, okay? And it turns out ZTE is a client of Mercury. Of course, okay? So that was one of Lanza's first clients when he first joined Mercury. So, and when they asked Lanza, well, you know what? a lot of businesses are worried about the tariffs. A lot of businesses in China are worried that Donald Trump is, saying all these things that he's going to cut off trade and he's going to impose the tariffs. And Lanza says to them, quote, "You have to get in there early, but I do think there are going to be tremendous opportunities there," referring to Trump and his administration.
Guys, it's so brazen. It's so brazen. Most people who have been following the kinds of deals that Trump has been making and the types of flip-flops he's been engaging in know that he never meant that he wanted to drain the swamp. He never did drain the swamp. And in fact, used his time in the White House to enrich himself. There were literally various foreign governments that had paid him money directly because he would insist on international meetings taking place at Trump properties. So their money would get funneled to him. So there was no way that he was ever interested in draining the swamp. And look, I also want to be fair. This is part and parcel of our political system, and it is a virus that infects both political parties. And so I do commend the Washington Post for at least being fair about that. As they mention, this is something that impacts Kamala Harris's campaign to some extent as well. It's just that Trump takes it to another level by giving these individuals close access to his campaign and also to his place of residence, Mar-a-Lago. So it's an extra layer of access of moneyed interests to the presidential candidate on the Republican side, and that's of course Donald Trump.
So last two things here, guys, or last quick three things. First, I want to correct something I said earlier. I went back to the Washington Post article. I misspoke. Ballard, another donor advisor that Anna discussed, yes, and one that's connected to the donors, is the one that's the most prodigious fundraiser for Donald Trump and bundled $50 million for Trump's campaign. So yes. So I said Lanza, it was Ballard. Okay, so I want to make sure that you guys got that right. And then I want you to know how much Trump made from foreign governments while he was in office, because Anna just mentioned that a lot of the property, they stayed in his properties. He would reward them basically in unofficial ways if they gave Trump money through his properties. It's supposed to be in a blind trust. Normally, of course, it wasn't in a blind trust. Trump breaks every rule there is. While he was in office, he made $7.8 million from 20 different foreign governments.
20 different foreign governments.
$7.8 million. And then his supporters will say, he turned down the presidential salary. That was an excellent PR gimmick,
yeah,
right?
Seriously.
Oh, I'm going to turn down 400,000 and I'm going to get 7.8 million when you guys aren't looking. And last part is, this is for the future. These advisors that are deeply connected to the swamp and almost regulate the swamp. They're also connected to a Nigerian oil and gas company, a Croatian natural gas trader, and an Andorran business that is mainly described as a primary money laundering concern by the US Treasury Department. So why did I tell you those three things? Because if he wins and in the next administration, all of a sudden we're doing big favors for Nigerian oil and gas companies and Croatian gas traders and random Andorran banks, you'll know why. If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.